Oh, we've got a great program for you today. Oh, it's Monday morning, you're thinking about next step. What do I do? I have no idea what to do. It's not clear. We're going to talk about why it's unclear, and we're going to give you 2 tips. That's right, 2 tips to make it more clear. All that on this edition of today's Antidote.
Stay tuned for today's Antidote, brought to you by the Renegade Success Network. Today's Antidote features a healthy dose of thought-provoking insights and information for business owners, entrepreneurs, leaders, and nonprofit professionals. Each day since March of 2020, this program has offered that one thing to help you continue on your own unique pathway to success. And now, Renegades, we bring you Bob Graham and Tom Brush.
Hey, Tom. Happy Monday.
Happy Monday to you. How are you today, Bob?
Oh, I'm getting some weird sound from you. Wow.
Not just my typical voice.
Oh, boy. It's going to get fun. I can feel it. Do I sound okay?
You sound perfectly fine.
Okay. How does this happen?
Oh, life on the road. It's always intriguing. So anyhow, while Bob tries to figure out his sound, I'm going to move forward and welcome everyone to today's Antidote, our daily broadcast and podcast, where we have a discussion around a topic each week. This week's topic is the next step. And then each day we'll break down one piece of it. Today we'll be talking about when the next step is unclear. Oh, and then Bob just disappeared. I guess he's trying to figure it out. Maybe he will be back. And maybe this will be, as we start year 3, a solo show. We'll see how that all works out. So anyhow, we'll have a conversation, or I'll have a conversation around that topic, the next step, when it's ready. Here's Bob back. And we encourage you that if you have thoughts to share, please feel free to put them in the comments, especially if you happen to be watching this on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, YouTube, or Bob's not around, I guess I have to say LinkedIn Live. Please feel free to share your comments because we know that'll have an impact on our show. And then at the end of our show, Bob and I will each offer our one thing, today's antidote. That thing that might help you today or sometime down the road where you're struggling to figure out what to do around your next step. If you happen to be listening to us on the podcast, we hope that you will share it because we know that you can't comment on it at the moment, or that you will at least rate the show so that others will be able to find it because it might be the one thing that they are looking for as they try to take their next step. If you are really interested in commenting and not quite sure where to do that, you can go to our Ring of Renegades Facebook group. And inside there, we have over 1,100 people who have identified themselves as renegades or wanting to be renegades or think they might be renegades. And we are trying to help them take their next step on their own unique pathway to success. So we look forward to seeing you inside the Ring of Renegades Facebook group. So welcome back, Bob.
Hey, Tom. That was so weird. Everything was fine, and then you sounded like a ogre from Shrek.
Interesting.
So I restarted everything. So I apologize for the difficulties. One of these days, I'm going to do one of these remotes with no issues.
Yeah, your voice is your sound's a little choppy now, but that's okay. We're going to move forward. So each day we start our show with our celebrations. Bob, what are you celebrating today?
I am celebrating the marvelous start to spring. It's a new season. It's a new opportunity. Flowers are going to start blooming. It's going to get warm enough to play golf. All the important stuff is coming in this next couple months.
Interesting. I guess I didn't realize today was the first day of spring.
Yesterday, I think, was first day of spring.
Got it.
Maybe today. It was one or the other.
Okay. Either way, we are now into spring, a new season, as we begin year 3 of today's Antidote broadcasts, as we celebrated year 2 or our second year anniversary on Saturday morning. And if you'd like to learn a little bit about what we have learned in that time, please feel free to go back and listen to episode 539, where it will tell you a little bit about that. Got some crackling going on in there, Bob. I'm not sure what the deal is. Anyhow, so my celebration today is, what am I celebrating today? I'm going to celebrate today that we had a good friend who came down and spent the week with us so that they could run around and do a bunch of lacrosse games. They did a lacrosse game with Liz and I on Wednesday, officiated it, and then had some other events. And so it was great to spend time with good friends, sort of celebrating that friendship as well as our common bond in officiating of lacrosse. So that's my celebration for the day.
Fun.
What do we have a quote, or am I diving into?
If you have a quote, that's great. Otherwise, I was going to offer a quote that I heard over the weekend that I've been really thinking through in my head for the last couple of days, and I'd love for people to comment about it, which is, if you can believe it, it is possible. If you can believe it, it is possible. And I've heard that, but over the weekend, I heard it in a different context. Someone put it in a context I'd never heard it before in. And it really got me thinking about how much I control what's possible by what I think. So I can get up this morning and say, today's going to be a great day. It's the start of spring. The flowers are going to bloom. I'm in season. Everything's beautiful. Or I can get up and go, oh, it's Monday. It's cold again. I could use another day of rest. I didn't want to get up early today. It's so cold. I'm so tired. I just don't want to do anything. And we have that choice, right? Correct. And I think it's really, for me, starting to realize that choice has real power.
I like it. I'll go with that.
It's all right there, so you can't take it away. I guess you could.
I could add something else, or I could edit it out if I chose.
That's it.
I won't do that. I like that. I like that idea. I mean, I always think that we get up every day and we have the opportunity to choose. And if we believe that it's going to be a great day, it has the possibility. And I think it all is about our perspective as we look back on the day, whether we choose to believe that it was, or we choose to go down the pathway of judgment, which we talked all about.
Woulda, shoulda, coulda part, right?
Correct. Or judging our results that we can't control. Yes. All right, excellent. So those are our celebrations. If you have celebrations you want to share, please feel free to put them in the comments. We would love to hear them. And if you have something you wanted to share as a celebration, every Sunday in our Ring of Renegades, every Saturday in our Ring of Renegades Facebook group, we give members a chance to share their celebrations for the week. So if there's something you wanted to put in there, head in there and post that under the post that is available for sharing your achievements and the successes you've had. All righty. So we might as well take the next step, I guess. And this step is a little more clear than sometimes it may seem for others. Because for us, after we do our celebrations, we dive into our topic. And our topic this week is the next step. And when it's unclear. So I think just to set this up a little bit, Bob, and then I'll let you dive into this first, is last week we talked about lessons learned. And one of the great things about lessons learned is you have the opportunity to walk away with new knowledge, experience, or perspective on something that you have done. And then many times it offers you the answer to the next step based on your lessons learned. And sometimes it does not. And the answer or the next step is unclear. You know, someone once told me that typically we go through this cycle of problem, solution. Each new solution creates a new problem that we have to figure out how to solve. We find a solution, and then we have a next problem. And so I think this is sort of that, okay, we've identified some things, and now we have the opportunity to take our next step. And sometimes it is unclear. You want to share some thoughts on that?
Well, I think what I'm realizing, and I was thinking about this a bit over the weekend in preparation for this, was that often the next step is clear deep down inside us. We kind of have a gut instinct, but it's unclear because of external forces. What if I fail at this? What if it doesn't make me money? What if people think I'm silly? What if the long list of what ifs come up, and they usually scuttle what we think might be the right thing to do or the best thing to do. And I know this has happened to me many, many, many times in my life. So it's not always that I don't know the next step. It's that I'm afraid to take the next step because it's a step. It's going into the unknown. Now, I think there are times that we don't know the next step. We genuinely don't know. We've hit a crossroads. We don't know which way to go. Like if you're in the woods and you circle around for a while, you don't have your phone and your GPS, and suddenly you get to a clearing and you're like, I think we were at this clearing an hour ago. Or maybe not. Oh boy, what do we do now? Do we go this way? Do we go back? Do we go forwards? That does happen to us. That happens to us as leaders. That happens to us as owners. That happens to us as managers. Happens to us as employees. I think the first thing in that situation that I do, that wood situation, is I panic. And I think that panic only makes it less clear how to act, what step to take. What do you think about that, Tom?
Yeah, I mean, I think that it's interesting. I was, as you were talking, and as I've thought about it, I think there are a couple of things. One, the next step is clear. And we believe, you know what, we found some answers, or what we believe to be answers, what we think is real in the moment. And so we're able to take that next step. Or the answers only create more unclarity or uncertainty. And now we are unsure about what the next step is. And those steps aren't really clear. The other option I think sometimes that pops in is there are multiple steps we could take. And having to choose which one to take becomes the challenge of when it's unclear. When they both seem like they could be next steps, and yet we have to finally decide which one are we going to take. And sometimes that indecision or that uncertainty of the clarity around what the next step should be will slow us down and help us get stuck. And I think that's one of the biggest challenges, is that we take an action and we learn if we take the time to learn from it. And then we have the opportunity to take whatever is the next step based on what we've gained. And sometimes, and maybe it's because, as you talked about, we get a little afraid of what might happen or could happen, and we pause at it, or we are just faced with options and we're not 100% convinced that which option is the way to go. And I think that's what oftentimes leads people to. And I think what's interesting about it is that I am starting to believe that every time I sort of identify lessons learned, I get a lot of clarity, which means that there are a lot of possibilities that could be the next step. And then trying to decide which is I think the challenge is people try to decide which is the right step, rather than just saying, okay, which is the step that I think is going to make the most sense at the moment, and take it. Because when we think it's the right step and it doesn't work out, we're right back to where we started, with uncertainty, frustration, overwhelm, and likely afraid to take the next step.
I also think, Tom, that often we kid ourselves into believing that the next step is really 10 steps down the road. The next step could just be, I've got to figure out what to do. Or I've got to, I was talking to someone a couple of days ago, and they were talking about they have to do their taxes. And they were totally worried about it. They were new in business. And I was explaining to them, here's the first step. Gather all your materials. Like, oh, I can do that. Most of them are already in a pile in my desk drawer. I just need to organize. Okay. So they did that. And then they called me and said, what's my next step? And I'm like, start looking at what you have, do a spreadsheet or use QuickBooks or use something to organize it. Breaking it down into those minute steps made it possible for that person to move forward in a way that they didn't see it, because all they saw was, my taxes are undone, the deadline's less than a month away, I've got to get my taxes done. So it's from here all the way to here in one big step. And that I think we delude ourselves. Whereas when you talk about the incremental step, allocate time to do your taxes would be a great first step. Yeah.
Sure.
Like literally clear an afternoon and say, this is what I'm going to do for work this afternoon. As opposed to, I'll try to fit it in, but I'm so busy, and, then you're doing it on the 14th of April.
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, I think that goes back to the idea of really scheduling your priorities and making sure that when you need to do something, you set aside the time to do it, so that you can maybe take whatever that first step is, even though it may seem minute or not really accomplishing the task that you're trying to achieve. And I think that's a really good point, is that the next step often becomes unclear because we think it's 3 steps down the road. And we are trying to take the big leap rather than just the next step.
Tom, if someone's having trouble with that idea of scheduling priorities, do we have a way we can help them with that? I feel like we do.
We actually do. So Bob and I created a program called Find Success the Renegade Way, which is set up to be a 6-week program, although you can binge it because it is available on our app, the Renegade Success Network. And it will help you figure out.
You snuck that in real fast.
Nice. Well, considering you missed LinkedIn Live and 5-star rating, I figured I should have given you more time to.
Did you do LinkedIn Live or no?
I just sort of said it. I didn't do the whole production part of it.
Okay. All right.
I was thinking about our listeners on the podcast who they wouldn't know the difference. So I just said.
Fair enough.
Anyhow, so if you're interested, you can go to the App Store if you have an Apple phone, or you can go to Google Play if you have an Android phone, and you can download our app, Renegade Success Network. And then you can find inside of it the program that's called Find Success the Renegade Way. And it will help you look at your schedule and your day a little differently. And I think it will allow you to help your next steps become a little clearer as you move forward. And I think that's, one of the key things is that when we don't have a plan or we don't prioritize the time for those next steps, it becomes harder and harder, or easier and easier to put them off, and harder to actually take them, to help us figure out how we move forward and then move forward again and then move forward again. And before we know it, we're a lot closer to the results that we were trying to achieve.
Or even better results. Sometimes you end up with better results than you thought when you start taking those steps. So
or
Tom,
just different results.
The thing today is really simple.
All right, what's your one thing? Let's hear it.
It's take the first baby step. Don't take a huge step. Take a little step. Because once you take one little step, I think you're going to see a second little step come along and a third little step. And before you know it, like a little toddler learning to walk, all of a sudden, we've all seen it, the little kids when they start to walk and then they just are motoring. It's the first step when they stand up and they're tentative and they don't know what to do. And then they realize, hey, I'm still standing. And then they fall down and then they get back up and then they walk 5 steps and then they hold on to something. Before you know it, it's amazing to me how quickly kids go from that first step to really walking. It's not like 3 weeks or anything. It's like minutes, sometimes a day. And I think that's how we can be in our pursuits. Take those baby steps and watch them add up, because at the end of the day, 10 baby steps is a huge step forward.
Sure. I would also, I like that. And I would add to that so often those baby steps, the order isn't necessarily important. I was thinking about your tax example, and if you think about like all of the next steps you could take between now and the time you wanted to complete your taxes, they could be, like you said, gather your materials. It could be call a tax preparer, because they'll maybe give you some insight. It could be, let me put together a spreadsheet where once I gather all my documents, I'll be able to input them. It could be just let me download stuff from QuickBooks, or so there's likely 8 to 10, as you call them, baby steps that you could take. And rather than worry about which one is the quote unquote right first step, just take one of them. And likely once you do one, you're going to realize, okay, well, this is the next one I then can do. And it isn't really going to matter, not in every case, but in this case, if you're following the directions on putting a desk together that you picked up at the local office supply store, well, you have directions, so they tell you the steps. So often we don't have those directions, and so just think about all the little steps that you could take and take one of them. Because as you said, I think once we take one, it becomes we say like, well, that wasn't so bad. Maybe I can take another, and then another, and another, and another, and at some point you get to the point where before you know it, you're a lot closer to completing what you were trying to complete than you thought.
Can I tell a little story, Tom?
Sure, why not?
Okay, so over the last 2 weeks, I know I've told you a couple of times, I'm trying to figure out TikTok. Okay, I've been watching a lot of TikTok. I want to start doing TikToks. It's a new language. It's a new world for me. I understand the mechanics, but over the weekend, I think I told you Friday, I was going to try to play around with TikTok over the weekend. I literally on Saturday afternoon had my phone open, had it open to TikTok, went to hit record, and then was like, my lighting's wrong. Oh, my audio is going to be wrong. I'm not wearing the right clothes. The sun's not hitting me correctly. I went through the list of all the reasons why I couldn't record one. And before you know it, I didn't take the next step. And then a couple hours later, I didn't take the next step. And then yesterday, I didn't take the next step. And this morning, I was like, oh, I got to do a TikTok. And I was all set as the sun was rising. I was going to do a TikTok. And then I'm like, no, I've got a hoodie on instead of a dress shirt. I don't want to embarrass myself. And I talked myself out of taking that next step. Even if the TikTok I do is the worst TikTok ever known to mankind, it would be a step forward just to get one under my belt. And so when we talk about not being sure of the next step, I think sometimes we just are afraid of that next step. And that's what I see with this TikTok thing for me. And it just as we were talking about this, I was like,
I think Bob's phone may have overheated again in the sunlight. So I think I'm going to try to finish that. Either that or it's me. But finish that thought is that sometimes we are afraid to take that next step. And that fear gets in the way of us being able to move forward. I'm not sure whether that's Bob or I. So I'm going to keep talking. So friends, thanks so much for being a part of our episode today. If you have thoughts or ideas you'd like to share about the next step and what to do when it's unclear, we'd love for you to share them in the comments, or as I mentioned before, you can go to our Ring of Renegades Facebook group and share them inside of that group, because there are people in there looking for their next step along their own unique pathway to success. So with that, we hope that you go out and make it a great day. Enjoy the beginning of spring and think of it as a new opportunity to do something a little bit different. And we hope that we will see you inside our Ring of Renegades Facebook group, or if you decide to download the app and start working on that Find Success the Renegade Way program, we'll see you in the active community in there. If not, we'll see you tomorrow morning, 8 a.m. Eastern time, for our next edition of today's Antidote. Have a great day, everyone. We will see you soon. And as Bob would say, if he were here, embrace the renegade in you and go out and enjoy the spring. Take care, everyone. Thanks for listening to today's Antidote, powered by the Renegade Success Network. The Renegade Success Network helps you confidently create your own unique pathway to success. To learn more about the Renegade Success Network and how you can take your next step, follow us on Twitter, connect on LinkedIn, or join the Ring of Renegades Facebook group. For full details on how you can join our community, go to renegadesuccessnetwork.com. Embrace the renegade in you.